And you're looking forward to tonight's speech in El Paso?
I am. The president gives excellent speeches.
You say that with a snicker, though. You know, don't you think he's moving the needle here a little bit?
We'll see. We'll see.
You don't see.
He did promise us throughout the campaign. I was looking through, the good Trump, campaign Trump, and he did promise that the building of the wall would start on day one, over and over and over again. He promised to fully enforce E-Verify, promised to throw out all of the gangs, have a deportation force. I mean, the things he promised us, he didn't hold speeches or issue two policy papers on how he was going to cut taxes or move the embassy. So, yeah, he has spent more than 2 years now not doing the things that got him elected. And, yes, I'm getting a teensy bit cynical about it, but I hope he builds it.
I got to read you something. This is from NBC News. Again, a font of fake news, but they've put out an explainer today. Why the Trump administration wants more detention space for migrants, and Democrats want a limit. So I'm going to read you this. Who are these immigrants in ICE detention? President Trump has repeatedly said ICE is holding dangerous criminals, including murderers. Well, ICE held immigrants in fiscal year 2018, that was last year, who collectively were convicted on 54,630 charges. Only 1,641 of those charges were homicide. Don't you feel better now, Ann? These are just anecdotes.
Is that from the NBC press release?
Yes, it's from their explainer.
Okay, so at least they gave the facts. They just threw in some rather odd adjectives like "only."
Well, it goes on. It goes on. You're going to see how much you're over exaggerating the problem here. The most frequent charges were for driving under the influence, followed by drug offenses, traffic offenses, and immigration offenses, such as reentering the country after a deportation order, which they don't bother to tell you, and as you well know as a lawyer, is a felony.
Yes. That's what was sort of strange about Fox Network pushing Kate's Law. It's been a felony punishable by, I think, up to 20 years in prison, more than they were even asking for in Kate's Law. I mean, the laws on the books are actually pretty good. We just needed a president who was not beholden to the donors to enforce them. Also, you remind me of something with that. They often lead with this, most of these crimes are just drunk driving. Yeah, that's a really big problem. It is slaughtering families. Your gregarious, hardworking gardener gets crap-faced on the weekend and is murdering families. This is one of the problems with taking in such huge numbers of immigrants from very different cultures. We're used to drunk driving being, an 18-year-old going a little bit fast after, a high school party. No, this is a much more endemic problem with our friends to the south, from the south of the border. Much like, they could say, fraud. You think it's somebody, kiting a single check. I'm not saying any of these things are good things. No, we're usually talking about immigrant-run conspiracies to defraud Medicare of multiple millions of dollars.
Right.
I mean, among the problems with immigration is that it's going to be a lot harder to have all of the social safety net. And this is a separate issue to the drunk driving problem because of all the fraud committed against government programs by immigrants. I was just reminded of this, if I could just mention one other thing. Sorry, I know I'm kind of rambling here, but one of my favorite TV shows, Forensic Files. The funny thing about it is you will often get information from Forensic Files that you will never, ever, ever get from the New York Times, Washington Post, or your favorite NBC, because they're not really thinking of, what do we have to hide from the public? They're just trying to tell a story. So one of the stories I originally was clued into by Forensic Files ended up with great detail in Adios America. It was a Palestinian man in this country who honor killed his own daughter. He was also suspected of terrorism, so the honor killing itself was captured on tape because the FBI had wired his house because of the terrorism investigations. The jury listened to the tape of him and his wife holding down and murdering their daughter because she was dating a black kid at high school, dishonoring the family. Okay, so that's the horrible story. But the funny thing about the Forensic Files episode was at the beginning they quote him saying, "I love America. It's so easy to rip off the government."
That's what a great quote.
You never read that in the New York Times. They just slip it in because they're telling the story. Well, this is a murder story. We're not concentrating on what political facts we need to hide from the public.
We had a case last week. I read about it on Friday night. I just read the federal roundups of illegal alien convictions in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Connecticut. And there was a guy down in Connecticut, a Mexican, had been deported 4 times for drunk driving offenses in Connecticut, and he keeps coming back. And they never lock him up. They just throw, they give him a 6 months or a year for drunk driving, but they never give him the 5-year sentence for coming back after deportation. So now he's been deported again. And how much you want to bet he's back in the nutmeg state, your home state, where you grew up, and sooner or later he's going to kill somebody.
No, that's right. Look, there really are cultural differences in crimes, as I point out in Adios America. One of the great things about American criminals is they tend to be dumb, so it's easy to catch them. That is not true of an awful lot of societies we are importing by the million. The law enforcement has to get used to a much cleverer criminal, like I say, running these multi-million-dollar government scams and the
Let me give you another one here. Yeah, this is one I just heard about last night. A friend of mine told me about this. It's in the local newspaper, Winchester. It's a suburb just north of Boston. Details emerge following Winchester child porn arrest. Okay, the cops went in. He was having one of these nice parties with about 100 people in a quiet suburban neighborhood, and he had 26 cars registered at his rented place. 26 cars. And so they went up into his apartment or into his house, and they found a bedroom that was wired with 3 cameras, and they found videotape of him assaulting an underage girl.
And his name is?
His name is Danilo Ramshed. And I'm going to read. I'll skip the first 12 paragraphs, Ann, for you, okay? While Ramshed became known to the local police recently, the Department of Homeland Security has had him on their radar for some time. Ramshed had overstayed his visa, and the department had concerns that he might have been involved in illegal activity, according to the police report.
Yes, child abuse is much more common in other cultures, as is honor killing.
This guy's from Brazil.
Wife beating.
Yeah.
Look, as I've said before, but it's worth saying again, American women are going to look back on the country we once had and realize they never had it so good. Most of the world does not have the respect for women, children, animals, plants, the environment, as modern America does. And I mean, the other point that I'm sure you've heard me say before, there's a reason the main immigration restrictionist group in Washington, D.C. is not called, other cultures suck. It's not called Mexicans litter a lot. It's called Numbers USA. The point is, we have a great country. We can assimilate people from very divergent cultures. But number one, why should we try? Why not bring in people from similar cultures who speak English and are going to be a benefit to our country? But point 2, you can't, when you're bringing them in at the numbers we're bringing them in at. There are areas in Detroit where the signs are in Arabic. There are areas all over Los Angeles where the signs and the language is in Spanish. There was 20 years ago a bunch of black families testifying before Congress from Los Angeles saying, look, we apply for a job at the local McDonald's and we're turned down because we don't speak Spanish.
Yeah, I know.
That isn't bringing in people and assimilating them. That's
but Ann, come on now. Remember what NBC said. They only were involved. Illegals were only involved in 1,641 homicides in the U.S. last year.
At least they gave the facts. That's quite rare for any media organization.
So what would you tell? What would if you were writing the speech? What would be the first words out of his mouth tonight if he's reading the teleprompter?
Thank God you elected me president, so I have full authority to build the wall.
Oh, I like that. That's pretty good. And then followed up with, and we are going to build the wall one way or another.
I think I would follow it up with breaking ground. He's just got to do it. He's got to stop talking about it. Look, I mean, he's way more cowardly than we thought he was going to be. He's much more of a girl, but I think he's laid the framework now. I mean, he's laid the groundwork. He's ready. Now we voted for this guy. You look back to his speeches; it's a total bait and switch. He promised us a wall. And
how can you call him a girl when you look at the other Republican Casper Milquetoast out there, like Ed Gillespie, who just rolled over and lost the governorship of Virginia to this below-average guy whose nickname was Coon Face or Coon Man in college. I mean, how can you call him a wimp compared to Jeb Bush or George W. Bush?
Let's put a pin in that for a moment. And yes, wasn't your reaction, and wasn't the reaction of every one of your listeners when everything came out about Northam being dressed up either as a Klanner or in blackface, and the nickname you just mentioned? What is with Republican opposition research? The fact that any Republican consultant is still alive, forget, having made millions of dollars losing elections for Republicans. It just makes your head explode. But, I noticed that we did not elect Ed Gillespie or Paul Ryan or Mitch McConnell. We knew we hated them. That's why we loved Trump. To say he's better than the exact thing that we were rebelling against is not a good solution or a good answer to that. Man, he was terrific on the campaign trail. He made a lot of promises over and over again. 2 policy papers specifically on immigration.
I know, and I think you contributed mightily to at least one of them, I do believe.
No, that's not true.
Really?
Well, I mean, he read my book, Adios America, and I won't say any more than that, but he used to follow me on Twitter. But no, that was the first immigration policy speech. I know it's been reported, but the guy's just wrong. But Bannon told that guy for his book on, that I wrote the immigration policy paper. I may have helped with a few ideas. I may have read it over, but no, that was Stephen Miller.
All right. Yeah, Ann, thank you for being with us, and I'll be thinking of you tonight as I watch the speech.
Right back at you, Howie. Bye-bye.
All right. That's Ann Coulter, and she'll be back with us next Monday.